what we are doing in Norway. We've been working with Per, with Henrik, with DTU for many years, and our work complements each other very well. I think, we work with different perspectives, different kinds of partners, and I think the questions that we're asking, fit very well with the gaps that you might have, and vice versa. What I want to show you, most of the presentation now is going to be about a fairly new project called CityxChange, where it's one of those smart city lighthouse projects funded by the European Union. Sonderborg is a lighthouse city in Smarten City. Trondheim is a lighthouse city in CityxChange, and NTNU, myself, is leading that whole CityxChange project. In fact, only a couple of weeks ago, we had your fellow lighthouse city, Tartu, from Estonia, visiting Trondheim as well. So there's quite a lot of interaction between those cities and those partners in different projects. The presentation I'm going to show you is made also by our project manager, like the daily manager of the project, and then the manager of the lighthouse city, Trondheim. So you'll also see a little bit about why this is important for the city of Trondheim to participate in, and how this links to the overall policies of the city. So it's not just about the energy, not just about the technologies, but it's a broader perspective. And first, a bit about the background. So basically, we have 32 partners. We spent more than a year preparing for creating that project. We had a lot of meetings. We brought together all of the industry partners from energy, transport, citizen participation, business models, etc. And everyone discussed, and we saw what is everyone going to do the next 5-6 years. What can we achieve if we build on top of each other? So not compete, but we build on each other's solutions, and we try to achieve something more. And then we got the project, and here you see that the cities that are involved. So the lighthouse cities are Trondheim in Norway, and then Limerick in Ireland. And then the follower cities, we have cities in Estonia, Czechia, Romania, Bulgaria, and Spain. And Trondheim is the largest of those cities, and Trondheim has 200,000 inhabitants. So it was very important for us to show that small cities can also do this. You don't have to be the big, resourceful, powerful capital in order to be able to do these kinds of projects. Here you see the partners we work with. It's everything from large international partners such as ABB to very small, not even medium-sized, but small companies, local companies, working with citizen participation, working with local mobility solutions, etc. Everything put together into one consortium. Our approach, you see here we have 3 big tiers. One, which might fit best with what Henrik just explained, is to create this new energy market. So looking at the technologies, at the business models, at flexibility, at energy trading, and how you, together with all of these elements, could actually create an energy market for the future. In addition, we have community exchange, so how do you work with municipal strategies, how do you get people involved, local stakeholders, local citizens, not just those who are always at the front row at a public hearing, but those that you might never hear of, that might have very good ideas, or basically that you would need to have involved in order to make a successful long-term project, but that would never by themselves actually get engaged in this. And then, of course, we have data modeling, we have simulation of the city, benchmarking, and data support for this as well. Here you see one example of what we've done so far. We started in November last year, so we haven't even finished 1 year yet. one of the things we've done in order to prepare for that energy market is to look at trading mechanisms and linking to flexibility. So one of the things with our DSOs, with the data companies involved, we've looked at how do you, probably 70. Anyway, the upper one, so if you look at the electricity financial systems, so there are quite a lot of different roles in the current market. The grey ones you might not be able to see that well, but so you have first system operators, power producers, market operators, you have power suppliers, consumers, and then you have grid operators. And what we did is to look at how can we, in the future, we're going to have to need a market that is more like the below, with only 4 big roles, where some of them have been merged. So how do we see that is? So for example, then some players will have 2 roles of producer and consumer. There will be exchange of flexibility of digital data, automatic operation. Well, you can read it yourselves as well. So we've been looking at not just what kind of energy technology would be needed and how do we balance energy production and consumption over time, but what is the role of the players in the market now? What should it be in the future? And can we then work with those players to make that transformation? So we're of course also working very much with the national regulatory agencies in order to see how this can be done. We have test beds, and we should definitely connect to the cities test beds and your task force to exchange notes. On the technological part of the project, you see some of the main issues we're trying to work with. One is to create this kind of modeling, like a kind of digital twin for the city, so we know what the benchmark is and we can measure progress. We are working with, positive energy blocks, so a couple of buildings that together will generate more energy than they consume. We start with a couple of buildings and then we scale up towards a whole district. We work with local grids, so microgrids. We work with electromobility as a service. So we have both public transport companies, we have mobility data, we have rental car service, all together in that project to see how they can create new business models. We work then on creating this trading mechanism for flexibility, both at a very local scale and more on a regional scale. And then the community engagement part is one very important one, is to create this bold city vision. So municipalities are going to, they're going to have to be low carbon, if not zero carbon, by at least 2050, ideally 2030. They need to reach their sustainable development goals. How does this concept of positive energy blocks and districts fit into that? So what is very important in our project is that the positive energy blocks are not the responsibility of the environmental unit or the energy unit within the municipality. It's the responsibility of the municipality as a whole. So it links to business, it links to marketing, it links to communication, it links to citizens, to the culture, to everything. It is not only something that an environmental or energy unit would do. So how do you put our experiences then into such a long-term vision for the city? We also work with engaging municipalities and communities, citizens, local stakeholders. Also, next generation, we just had a big event in Stavanger where an entire day was focusing exactly on how do young people want to connect to this? What is their stake in this? How can they contribute? And not just us inviting them in, but if they could choose what the priorities would be within such a project, what would that be? We work, as already mentioned, with the regulatory authorities, and we create test beds, which we call playgrounds, where citizens, local stakeholders, others can come in and contribute with their solutions, test them, get help to scale them up, and then we can see if they actually will contribute to creating these positive energy districts. We work a lot with open innovation. So basically it's anyone can connect. It's not a very hierarchical system, so everyone can contribute, can cooperate. We have a lot of experiments. We work with open data and systems by default. So that of course creates quite some challenges especially for companies who are not used to work within the system, but we're really trying to create this as much as possible. We also work then a lot with the other European Lighthouse projects to see how this can be done. Especially, so the European Commission, they really want open innovation. At the same time, every year they are giving funding to new projects who have had to specify exactly what they're going to be doing in the next 5 years, for what amount of money, with which partners, described in 485 pages in detail. And so how do you match open innovation with that kind of system? That is what we're trying to answer. So if you have any good advice, that would be great to hear. Here you see some of those positive energy blocks and districts that we have. So those are all of our cities. The pinkish buildings are currently the ones we're working with now, that then will become positive energy, so they generate more than they consume. And then, you know, the turquoise, bluish areas around them, with the line around it, those are the ones that then hopefully become these positive energy districts over time. And very important is that, so we start with buildings, but also then with community, with municipal planning, urban design, with mobility systems, because it cannot be only about buildings and infrastructure. It needs also be about the public spaces, about the green spaces, the facilities that you have in an environment. So why do people walk from one area, but they would take a car from another, even if the distance is exactly the same? So we need to find out how we can create these districts so that it's easy for people to make these environment-friendly choices. So we start, as said, from buildings, hubs. There's one that was just opened now. That's a new building in Trondheim, by the sea, bar house. But there's also, for example, in Limerick, Gardens International. So that whole district that they're working with is an old Georgian district, and that is going to be renovated. So it's a lot of individual house owners. It's a lot of local stakeholders that need to be engaged in this project in order to make this work. It's not one big office building, for example, that you have to upgrade. So there's really a big people factor into this as well. And then also, as you see upper right, so in Sestao, same. So we have actually, most of our cities are working with existing districts, existing buildings, and even sometimes historical, like heritage buildings and districts. And that is a very important challenge, of course, so we can't just, you know, knock down everything and then build something new. So to see what can we do with existing buildings and districts to keep lifestyle, culture, etc., but at the same time create this positive energy balance. What can we then do with new buildings inserted into those existing districts to improve the balance? This is then a little bit on why the city of Trondheim was on board. So basically for them, they want to test these concepts. So what they did, and that was really amazing, they didn't just engage in the project with one unit within a municipality, but they created a horizontal structure across the whole municipality. All of the units are involved, They form a group, a team. They meet every week at least, but much more often. We have a joint project office in the center of the city, where people from Trondheim municipality, from NTNU, other partners can come and work together. It's like a landscape office. There are citizen observatories, so places where we have exhibitions, where we invite citizens in to come and work with us. So it's really, they took everything, all of their, let's say, aspirations, everything that they would like to test, even if it's not strictly speaking related to energy, but also other things, ways of interacting with citizens, new mobility concepts, etc. Everything is just poured into those playgrounds in the city. And of course, then we work very closely with them to see, well, does it actually have the effect they intended? Here then you see a little bit more. So I basically already mentioned that. So one thing I didn't mention yet is the political anchoring. So it's again, in order to be able to do this for at least 5 years, to link this to long-term municipal strategies, it needed to be anchored with the mayor, with all the political parties, with the CEO, so within the whole administration. So this is really just, it's not the work of a few people or one project, but this is really changing the way the municipality works and the way we work with them. You see some of the things that have come out for the municipality from this. The way of working and this bold city vision, how to link this to strategies, that has become a pilot within the International Platform for Sustainable Development Goals. So we are actually today, so from Trondheim, from NTNU, I should have included that here, we are in Geneva to officially open an SDG Center of Excellence in the city of Trondheim, based on this cooperation between the university and the municipality. I can give you more information about this if you want. It's official as of today. We also, so they created their own, they hired their own smart city responsible, that is going to make sure that smart city is not something separate, but that is going to link it to everything else the municipality does. We set up this municipality university cooperation framework with shared leaders. So we hired people whose only responsibility it is to make sure that the university and the city work well together, have joint priorities, joint activities on specific topics. And, well, yes, and a lot of things are also happening in terms of relational welfare. So exactly, again, how to interact with citizens, not just to get their input, but also as a way of improving well-being in the population. I already mentioned many of these things. We have a few reports. Well, if you go to our website, you'll see the first reports that you can download from there. So we've worked, this far we've worked a lot on regulations and on creating these test areas, so regulatory sandboxes where we can test new things. We've been working on this bold city vision, on concepts for electromobility, how to connect mobility to those buildings and districts. So there are a couple of reports in that already are out. If you have more questions about the project, you can contact, well, either of us. I wanted to show you, oh, no. Did you download it?
We have the PowerPoint also, if you want that.
Yeah, no, I think I changed it like half an hour, no, just before the lunch. Yeah, sorry, I can talk about it. You can give the thing later. Based on this, what we've seen is that, so yes, in terms of energy technology and flexibility and markets and business models, all of that is very, very important. But in order to make that successful in the long term, there's a lot of people-related challenges that are often not sufficiently addressed in those types of projects. Basically the calls are not asking for that kind of thing, or just a little bit, as an afterthought. So what we did, and what you can see then in the slides at another time after this conference, is that we just now created a new initiative for an open urban innovation center, where we look at smart collaborative governance. So how do public, private sector, research, citizens, how to manage that interaction? If you ask projects, many of them say, oh, but we create a project and we have our steering committees and we have our structures, but the actual daily interaction between people is something that most projects and most strategies do ad hoc. We just see how it works. Or we work in the formal structures. What we want to see is how do you then build that co-creation between public, private sector, research, citizens, education on a daily basis to get the best ideas, to get the best results. How do you get local communities and citizens on board? Older generation, young generation, people who live in, let's say, more challenged districts, people who, maybe some are experts on local culture, local lifestyle, on exactly how to use. So a lot of people would, for example, they are innovators in their own homes. I'm not sure how to explain this, but a lot of people, when they don't find what they're looking for, so they make these local solutions that fits for themselves. If we could get those ideas, connect them to companies, or help people to create their own companies, to scale these things up, bring them into a market so maybe other people can enjoy them as well. So those kinds of things we want to see, not just looking at citizens as like an end user or consumer, but how do we use people as resources? How do we, all of those bold visions, they talk about a good life and attractive cities, but then when it comes down to it, what do we measure? Do we measure that attractiveness? Do we measure that it's a good urban space? Do we measure that people like to be there? Do we measure that they like to be there and they like the solutions? So that's also why those solutions, those energy technologies work, because people like to use them, they think it's okay. So there's a lot of things that we measure because they're easy to measure, but we don't necessarily measure what we want to know. That's something we want to change. 200 pages of data. No one's going to read that except maybe, Central Denmark experts. And that's good that we have these experts, but what do you do then with politicians, with administrations, with basically anyone who will not have time or expertise to see those data? So we are working with visualization, with creating digital twins of cities, where you can basically just see a 3D model, maybe linking to virtual reality, so that you can immediately see the effect of demographic changes. You can see the effect if you change a school from one location to the other, or you change the opening hours of that school. How does that affect traffic in that area? Those kinds of things are things we want to do. And the last one, and then it's finished. So a lot of projects look at, you make a pilot, and then you scale up, and then scaling up doesn't go, so it sticks to pilot or test bed. Or you test something, it fails, and you don't tell this to other people because, you feel it's not so good to transfer it to others. So we want to see, and that's the loop that's shown on one of the slides, is we want to look at the entire life cycle. So from visioning to anchoring with politicians and local stakeholders, to planning, testing something, prototyping it, scaling it up, measuring it, bringing it back into that big vision with all these stakeholders, with the visualization, with the measuring, etc., to make a more complete ecosystem. That can support, energy technologies, mobility, waste management systems, circular economy in a city, in a community, anywhere. But so to create the whole framework for making those things successful in the long term. And we hope to be able to cooperate with Sonderborg, with NTNU, with others on testing this also in Denmark and in the rest of the world. Thank you.
Thank you very much for sharing your vision with us. As an engineer, I truly believe that you have taken the most challenging aspect of smart cities, that is the citizens and the other stakeholders. And I hope to have you sharing your experience in a few years with us and help us to engage users and citizens. We have time for a few questions. Yes?
Okay, thank you. My name is Hans Blom. I have a question about what I like a lot is that you involve the citizen. I think that is very important. At the end, the citizen turns all about them. But what is your experience? Are they aware of what exactly is meant by a positive energy building or a positive energy district? Do they understand what it is?
Okay, sorry. No, but a lot of, I mean, you don't even have to look at citizens. A lot of companies, a lot of city administrators wouldn't know what it is either. So we have to work a lot on, we are now making like local information material with just like, look, this is what we're trying to achieve, so exactly if you're, in terms of energy efficiency, in terms of, for example, solar cells, in terms of making it possible for people to buy or sell energy from or to their neighbor. So just breaking it down into very specific things. Usually when we say that, look, okay, so it's about this neighborhood, instead of importing energy on the annual, let's say, average, instead of net importing energy, we want to make sure that we manage everything by ourselves or that we import less than what we export. It is possible to discuss these things, but it's easier than to break them down to very specific things, like how does it, what people are interested in is how does it affect their daily lives or their daily work situation, is it going to be more expensive to take a bus? Are they no longer going to have a parking space? And if they have to give up their parking space, what do they get in return? Because a lot of people don't want to take their car necessarily to work. It's just if you give them a better alternative, they might take that. But if you have, let's say, 2 or 3 kids that have to be dropped off of kindergarten and you have to go to the store in the meantime, and then you have to get to work, and then you have to get to practice, and so very often a car is the only way to make that work. So we work with them, we talk to them to see, could we provide an alternative? Or could we, we work with our companies to provide alternatives, not just for one person, but for many. So it's a lot of local discussions, workshops, talks, and we do that not just for energy, but actually for all the Sustainable Development Goals. What does it mean for waste, for water? What does it mean for, how can you, if you, with these energy solutions, how can they give you also cleaner air, a more safe environment in your, your neighborhood, those kinds of things. So trying to translate the effect it would have on people's lives.
So it's more than energy alone.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, a quick question, please.
It was very interesting to see how you relate to citizen. Completely agree that engineers, we leave them aside too often. I have a question also about a specific type of citizen, which is the students studying at NTNU. Did you get a lot of interest from them to contribute to their projects? I know that, for example, at Aalborg University, there's a strong focus on student projects, so they tend to go around and look at what they can do. Do you experience the same, that they come reach out to you and ask you, can we do a project with you?
Yes, they do. You should have seen when we, last year, when we got the project, we get loads of questions, students who, and the interesting thing is that the students just talk to us directly, because they didn't go through their supervisors or their departments or their programs, but they just addressed us directly, which is very nice in terms of interest, but of course it's not a long-term solution. So what we are doing this year, for example, is at NTNU we have this course called Experts in Team. So it's all the fourth-year students. They work in interdisciplinary groups. We have now, so for more or less 300 students, we will have something linked to this project. And for some students it might be linked to energy, for some it might be linked to mobility or to citizen engagement or everything together. So we try to offer larger courses, we try to build it into programs, and we try to work then with, so can we connect more of our staff at NTNU, also those who are not directly linked into this project, but those who would be able to supervise students, so can we connect them? And can they then give the students assignments, or can the students choose assignments from the project? So we're trying to create a more systemic solution around it. In the project, we also have, actually this is the first, and for the time being, maybe still the only one of those. I think now there's 17 or 18 of those projects. As far as I know, there's only one that's led by a university. The rest are led by big research institutions or consultancies. A few are led by cities, but we are the only university, and we're trying, of course, then to bring that element into us. So what we want to do is use the students as change agents. So they can also, we can give them a list of, here's some topics, challenges, and companies that you could work with, but they can also come in and identify their own challenges and solutions that they want to work with. Because otherwise, we don't want to predefine what they can and cannot do. The students will have much more insight also. Maybe they're coming with new questions, with new ideas that we have never thought about. We have art students who want to connect to this. Exactly by looking at this with a critical vision, asking different kinds of questions and see, well, what more could we achieve? So those things I think are very interesting. The University of Limerick is in this as well, but we would like to, through the ERA joint program, maybe through some other European cooperations between universities, to see if more students could link to this and if we could organize this somehow.